With my superior Photoshop skill, I have created this start menu. I've put a little bit of a title text on there. I've selected one of the spaceships to be our player avatar, and I put it in this amazing space environment. There is some room left over to put a start button, but now that I think of it, we're probably going to put the start button over here in the corner because you want to reach it with your thumbs, right? Let's think about ergonomics. Maybe we'll put the high score list under the ship instead. The point is, we will load this start menu image as a background in our main activity. We will put a button view on top of this, which will allow the player to launch the second activity, which will run our core game loop. Let me show you how to bring assets into Android Studio. I'm going to start with just copying this file so I can bring it with me and open the editor. Here's our drawable folder. So let's see, show in Explorer. This opens the file manager. And as you can see, the folders in here is basically representing the folders you have in your project. You have your drawables, your layouts, your values, and the mip maps. You have a mip map for different density displays. This allows Android to pick an asset that is close to the screen display and then scale according to whatever magic it needs to do. If you check the 2 articles on working with supporting different density displays or a variety of displays, you'll see what this is all about. For our purposes, this is a pain in the butt. We would put our assets in drawable, but drawable by default will be scaled by the operating system. So the resolution you create your asset in is not going to be the resolution you have when you have loaded it. Say my start menu might be 1600 pixels wide, and when I load it in Android by default, it will have some other pixel value. I don't want that. So what we do is we create a tagged folder called drawable no DPI. So anything we put in here will not be scaled by the operating system. That way we can scale it ourselves. Normally you would have a high resolution assets and then load and scale it simultaneously. The thing, apart from this just being confusing and hard to deal with, is if you create assets for many different resolutions, you're going to have to test that and quality assure that, and it's a bunch of time and effort put into not a lot of payoff. It's easier to just do this ourselves. So I'm pasting the start menu in here. If I go back to resources, open drawables, it's in here. Perfect. We also need to bring some of the ships over, so I'm going to do that now. This one is what I picked for the player, so I want some that are visually distinct from the player so we can make enemies out of them. So I'll just pick these 4. I can see a problem with these files, and that's the name. The Android resource system want all of the file names to be lowercase, so I'm just quickly going to change these out. So TM2, TM3, the name is not important, they just need to be, unique. And the fact that they're numbered might be convenient because that makes it easy to loop over them if we want to do that at some point. But anyway, TM5. So those are all lowercase. We go back here and here they are. If your files don't turn up in Android Studio, make sure that you've named them correctly. Now, I want to add this background to our main activity. So we open the layout. Here we are. We have the text view that says hello class. I'm going to just delete that. Then click on our activity. These are the attributes of our activity. If we want to edit it visually, you can edit it in XML. That's, of course, a bit of a pain. So the first thing I want to do is set a background. I can't see it, so click on View All Attributes and then use the search. That's the easiest way to do this. This is a background. We want to pick a reference to that asset. It's under Drawable, Start Menu. Done. If I run this now, I'm pretty sure it will look like crap though, because an app has a lot of widgets surrounding it by default in its default theme. We're gonna have to disable those. Get started, run. Here we go. So as you can see, it's fairly squished. We have a status bar, we have an action bar, and we have a navigation bar. They're all eating up space from our game. So we need to remove those. And normally we do this in Java, but I can show you how to do it in your theme as well. If you want to read more about this, if you go to the course website, read the article on going full screen for a bit of history and how to do this in code. We'll get to that later in the course, obviously. Another problem is that we are currently allowing rotation. Apparently not when the phone is upside down, but if we do this, you can see it's even more squished. So we need to control this, and the easiest thing to do is to disable rotation. A thing to note, by the way, is that when you rotate your app, it's not just flipping orientation. You're actually being destroyed and recreated. So this is a thing we have to be aware of as app developers, but particularly as game developers. We have to be able to save state at a moment's notice and then restore it perfectly quickly. Right now we don't have any state to protect, but be aware, rotation kills and recreates the app. It kills your context. And this is true even if you disable rotation, it will happen. And it can happen at any point. That's part of the life cycle, the agreement you have with the operating system. You can be killed at any point, so we have to deal with that fact. And we'll look at how to do that later. For now, though, let's start with actually just killing rotation, so it sticks to landscape mode, sorry. We go to Android manifest. If I scroll in, this is where we declare our main activity, and we want to add a property to it. That property is Android : screen orientation. Yep. There's a bunch of settings, and what I want is landscape or sensor landscape. So with sensor, it will just rotate with the phone. With landscape, it will be locked into one landscape orientation. With sensor landscape, it will rotate between either of the two landscape orientations. So if I build that, it's hard to explain, but easy to show, I hope. And meanwhile, I'm going to open the theme because we want to make some edits in here to remove some of that junk. So right now, it will not go to portrait mode, but it will flip over like this. And the benefit of sensor landscape and sensor portrait is that your context is not being removed when this happens. So there is no restarting when you're rotating in this way. That's convenient. We might as well use it. So action bar, status bar, navigation bar. Let's see what we can do. Our default app theme is inheriting from a parent theme. This is a built-in theme from the compatibility library we've been talking about, or rather that I've mentioned. And it has a property for the dark action bar. Most of the built-in themes have a different version with no action bar. Autocomplete, so that should remove the action bar. Just make sure I restart this. There we go, action bar is gone. Let's rotate the phone again. Now, we can add a bunch of settings here. Again, we should do this in Java. We can do it in both places. It won't hurt if I do that. These are some of the settings you want to look at. The easiest thing is to look at the article that I've published on the course website, or Google, Android theme settings for full screen. But window no title, window action bar, window full screen, window content overlay, and immersive mode. And then set those values appropriately. So if I now try it, let me just make sure. Yeah, that seems reasonable. There was a thing I wanted to show you. When you make run app, it seems I've already checked the bar. But normally there's a pop-up that asks you where you want to deploy your application on. And so now I'm deploying to my emulator, but if you have your phone connected with USB and development mode turned on the phone, Google how to turn on developer mode. If it's connected to your PC, you can deploy directly to the phone. So it's trivial to launch your game and test it on real hardware, and quite fun, so try that. So now we have roughly full screen. I noticed that the navigation bar is still here. That might be a setting on the phone, And we're probably gonna adjust that in Java if we can't do it from here or some other place. But this looks all right, so I'm happy. All I need now is to add the button, and then we need a button handler in the code. So I go back to the layout. I can pull a button view onto our activity, and we are, I believe, in a constraint layout by default, and so you notice the button has a warning here. That's because there are no constraints on the button right now. So at runtime it will just float up into the top left corner. The constraints can be added trivially if you just, pull that to the edge you want to constrain it to, or another item. That's basically what it's good for. I'm just gonna pull it to these two sides of the screen. This way it sticks there no matter how we rotate the app. We don't need to do more than that. I believe the warning should be gone. Yep. So let's just change some settings on it. I want it to have another background color. So let's make that black. Now you can edit and just put a hex code in here. If you worked with CSS or any, Photoshop, whatever, you can put a hex code in. But as with all things in Android, what you want to do is use a resource identifier. Colors are resources. So if you go under color, just search for black. There is an Android black. This makes you more flexible. Say that your theme has a light mode and a dark mode or whatever. You might want to adjust what black means in your app for that setting. So this allows you to disassociate the absolute values from the values you want to use. So that's background. This means I have to change the text color as well. So that's a text color setting. I want that to be white. And then I want to change the text. So let's just write start game. And as you know, you do not want to hard code strings ever. Also not the sizes, but actually let's see if we can set size to say wrap content. Width, layout width. Wrap content. I just want more margins here, I feel. That's ugly. But, you can edit this yourself. I don't want to waste your time entirely, so I'm just going to hard code it for now. You can set it to wrap content so that the button is always as large as the text, and then add some margins so it's not as cramped. But now we go to the source code. We see that the string is hard coded. So if you put your... if this bubble doesn't turn up, you can just put your marker in here, press Alt-Enter to force the menu, and then extract that. I'm going to give it a better name than start game. I want this to be start button text, so I know what it is when I look at the string values later. And so speaking of resources, when we are doing @ we are referencing an ID, an identifier. In this case, it's in strings start button text. When it's @+id, we are creating a new identifier. So in this case, we're creating the identifier button. That's how we talk to it in our Java code. I want this to have a better name because when we hook up the button handler, I need to know what it's meant to do. So I'm just going to call this start button instead. That's how we will reference it in our Java code, just like we're doing here with activity main, but it will be our layout buttons. So yeah, I think that's it for now. We have locked rotation, we have roughly full screen, we have a button, so now it's time to get programming. Just gonna make sure that it still launches properly and behaves. Go, go, go. And this is subtle, you can't see this, but it has some default behavior, so it does react to me clicking visually. There's probably a sound effect as well, which we can disable in code later on. But yeah, I'm happy with this. So it's time to hook up the button handler, write a second activity, and get the game going. See you later.